Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live on Saturday night. Does that make it Saturday Night Live? Probably, but I'm not sure if that is maybe copyrighted, so I might not be able to use that name for our session. Anyway, there we go. So I hope everyone's having a nice day, and today's session is going to be on Microsoft 365 as a whole. As I mentioned in the description for the live event, we've been into quite a bit of detail on a couple of the main applications within Microsoft 365. But what I'd like to do today is just kind of do a quick run through, because there's so many applications in Microsoft 365, of the main kind of uses for these applications, why you'd use one maybe over the other in some instances. There are some where you actually don't know whether it's kind of where there's no real right or wrong answer sometimes, whether you use one or the other. But it depends on your situations and how you apply different solutions to those situations. So no one size fits all, but we'll try and kind of give you a quick overview about the main points today. So welcome to everyone who's watching us live, and welcome also to those of you who are watching us on the recording. Really good to have you here. And I'm going to go straight into talking about Microsoft 365 apps. So bear with me while I do the usual and share my screen. So here we go. And what I'm going to show you today is pretty much the Microsoft 365 portal. So here we are on the Microsoft 365 portal. We've gone into the All Apps section here. So right down at the bottom on the left-hand side, we're in All Apps. And this brings us to this page where we have our Microsoft 365 apps under one tab. We can then also click here to see All Apps, and that just gives us a couple of extra apps. It might also show up a few additional apps that we've added in to Microsoft 365, which might be external apps also. Here, they're pretty much the same because I haven't really added in anything external yet. And then down at the bottom, we've got a tab for tips and tricks. Okay, so back to our Microsoft 365 apps. I'm going to go through the main ones here. So let's start off individually. So I'm working away in Microsoft 365. I want to save my files somewhere. I want them to be available in the cloud. I want to maybe share one or two of them with other people. And I also want to be able to synchronize them between the cloud and my desktop so that I've got a copy wherever I go. Now, what is the ideal app for me to do this? Well, the ideal app is OneDrive. So OneDrive, so the clue is in the one. So one generally is for the individual. So OneDrive is your store for individual files. Depending on which plan you've got, it will give you a huge amount of space, usually, normally up to a terabyte of space on that OneDrive. So you've got plenty of space. You can then synchronize those files down to your local computer. And you can also use files on demand to synchronize just those files that you use often in order to save your local space. Okay, so there's OneDrive. So next we're going to move on to group of people sharing work. So generally sharing files or sharing information, sharing news, etc. So what would I use for that? Well, I would use SharePoint. That's down here. So we have SharePoint. So as you can see, there's a bit of a description also underneath these. So share and manage content, knowledge, and applications. So we've seen in previous sessions, but for those of you who may be looking at this at the first time, we have team sites where people are generally working on different aspects together, and information is being updated often and by most people within that group of people. Or we also have communication sites, which serve as more of a communication mechanism from a smaller group of people to a larger group of people. So a good example of communication site is an intranet within a company. So you would have a certain number of people curating content, approving content, and then releasing it on the intranet. And that would be more of a communication site scenario rather than a group where you've got kind of maybe a smaller group of people working together. So such as a kind of finance team or a legal team, all with the same access to documents and being able to update those live and work together on them. Okay, so there we go. And SharePoint also then, this is a nice segue into another app. So SharePoint has an aspect called SharePoint Lists. Now lists, well, not recently actually, it's been quite a while now, but lists became its own application. So here we go. We have an application here called Lists, and this is an evolution really of the SharePoint lists. And these lists, they still live within SharePoint. So we can still create those lists and link them to a SharePoint group, or we can create them from the SharePoint group site, SharePoint team site itself, and they kind of live within that team site. But we can kind of do that as well now without having to go into SharePoint, without having to manage that through SharePoint, because we can do it through the Lists app itself. So for example, if I open Lists here, so we can have a quick look. So rather than having to go through SharePoint, I can just get straight to my lists, and these will be available to me here. So we also have, as you can see there, there's a Lists desktop app also. So some of these applications are available purely online, or maybe in a mobile device as well, mobile device app. And as you can see, Lists has a desktop app that you can also use to manage these lists. Okay, so let's close that one down. Now, I'm going to go into now the maybe Microsoft 365 applications that people are maybe a bit more aware of, that they've used in the past, that may not be so much part of the 365 kind of web aspect, but they're kind of services that people would have used before. So I'm going to start with Outlook. So Outlook has been around since before Microsoft 365 as an application. It was an application that you downloaded, installed on your desktop. So there is still a very, very well featured and feature rich desktop client for Outlook, and it keeps evolving all the time. It's a great experience, in my opinion, for kind of email, calendar, people, so managing kind of contacts and things like that. So as a personal organizer, Outlook is great. You can also use Outlook online, and there's also a really good Outlook application for iOS and Android. So you can always get access to, subject to your kind of organization's policies, you can always get access to that information wherever you are. So there's Outlook. So we've talked about email. So that's one of the main communication tools still. And then moving on then to the Office applications that we're aware of. So with most subscriptions to Microsoft 365, you will find that you will get desktop versions of, so there are some subscriptions where you don't get the desktop versions of the apps, but in quite a few of them you will get. So here we have Word, so word processing, and again, Word and all these programs really, because they're part now of the Microsoft 365 suite and a subscription basis, they keep evolving all the time. And, as part of your subscription, you get access to all of those new features as they come out. You can choose, depending again on your organization, kind of how soon you get some of those new features, but they do constantly kind of improve these programs. So again, another one of the desktop apps that we get, and that's quite interesting actually. Where are we? So I'm not seeing Excel. So very interestingly, so Excel hasn't actually appeared on here for me, but it has appeared here on the left hand side. So if we go down to all apps, then it is there. Okay, there we go. So Excel again, really fully featured spreadsheet program. It keeps evolving all the time. So here's your Excel, kind of loved by many for kind of data analysis, data collection. It's not a database. It shouldn't be used as a database. It's not the place to really store data where you need to be able to analyze kind of properly, kind of relationships between different data. But it is mega powerful, and it's really useful for, kind of people who are not maybe IT kind of power users, sometimes to be able to just quickly kind of use some of its features to analyze data. So there we go. So that's Excel for you. And then PowerPoint is the one that everyone loves. death by PowerPoint is what we say. You know, really, it's so easy these days to create very kind of interactive presentations within PowerPoint. So death by PowerPoint should really be a thing of the past. It's possible to put kind of surveys in there. It's possible to use animations, and even though you don't want to use too many animations, you know, maybe just one or two to break up kind of the text, for example, in a presentation. But then also, you know, you can link into videos on YouTube to bring your point across. So if there's something that's kind of really going to reinforce what you're talking about in your presentation, you can link it to external sources easily. And PowerPoint now comes with things like a PowerPoint coach. So you can run through your presentation and it will give you suggestions on how you can improve that presentation before it goes ahead. So again, really useful. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this. Okay, and then just a few others. So we've got bookings here. We've already looked at bookings in this series. This is really useful for people who need to manage time with external appointments or internal appointments even. So if you're a doctor, if you're, you know, a medical professional, if you're a lawyer or a service professional where you have slots of time that you give for you know, your customers, and you need to be able to, for them to book in, and especially if you want them to be able to book in online and see those free and busy time slots, then bookings is great for doing that. And then finally, I'm going to just bring your attention to Power Automate here. So there are lots of links between these different aspects. So we've seen SharePoint and lists. So lists live within SharePoint and they evolved from SharePoint. You know, kind of then Planner and To Do. So within Teams, for example, Planner and To Do become one task list where it becomes possible to show what those kind of tasks that your team has to do and what yourself has to do. Now Teams, I'm just going to come to Teams quickly because Teams really is the glue now that brings all of this together. So, you know, Teams is a fantastic kind of program that really kind of gives you kind of virtual meetings. It allows you to do all that work within Excel, Word, within PowerPoint, within Teams. You don't have to leave there. It builds on top of SharePoint and OneDrive for file storage. So it really brings together everything and is the glue now for Microsoft 365. Okay, now the final one that I just want to bring your attention to is forms. So data collection, be it internal or external. A few things you can't do if you're sending those forms externally, because people need certain licenses to be able to use. The main one is file uploads, but you can send forms either internally or externally and collect data in the way that you need to collect it and then send it. So we were talking about Power Automate, and we can move data between all of these different services. Sometimes if the connector is not already there and obvious, we can do it through Power Automate, and we can bring information from one application. So for example, we could have a form that's collecting data. Once that's collected data, we can send that, for example, over into Excel to analyze in a bit more of an interesting manner. Okay, that was a really quick overview of those apps within Microsoft 365. So each one has this different, you know, each one makes up a part of the 365 environment. Each one is important in its own way. Sometimes there's some overlap between some of them, and it's not always clear which one you should use. But, you know, we can certainly kind of, if you want to ask us any questions or anything, you know, do so in the Facebook group, which I'll just put up now. So within that Facebook group, you know, we'd be more than happy if you've got any doubts as to which one of these applications you should be using at certain times. We'd be more than happy to go through that with you. And just head over to our website as well and, you know, kind of get some of the latest blogs that we've got on there. So Viva, for example, is something that's fairly new and has been evolving as well since it's come out. So, you know, kind of if you've got questions about these things, we'd be more than happy to help you with those. And we've got some blogs as well that we try and kind of release to help with these new aspects. Okay, thanks very much for joining us today, and we'll hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye.